Hi everyone, it's Chris and Shantae Gorham, and we are members of the Marriage Ministry Lead Team, and we wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about walking in faith together in marriage. Now, if there's ever been a year that we needed to walk in faith together, it would be this one right here.
Yeah.
This has been an unprecedented year, unlike any that Shantae and I can remember in our lifetime. And with so much going on in the world, it almost feels like there's a storm brewing, and the impacts of that storm reach right into our homes. And in those instances, it's always natural to respond in fear and to try to just flat out survive.
Yeah, I mean, that's why in moments like this, we find it so necessary to have a word of truth to stand on together, something that we can stand on in faith for our family and for us as a couple.
Yeah, and for our family, we've anchored ourselves on the story of Jesus and Peter walking on water. In this story, we find the disciples in the middle of a lake, stuck in a storm. And if rowing all night with the wind and waves beating on you wasn't enough, they eventually see Jesus walking out on the water, and they are flat out terrified because they don't recognize him.
Yeah, and we were drawn to this story because of Peter's example, his willingness to step out of the boat in the middle of the storm and just walk on the water with Jesus. And that so speaks to us because it feels like this year, probably like you, we're in the middle of a few storms and just stuck. But it reminds us of what the Lord wants us to do in the middle of it all, to not fear and to just step out in faith.
Now, when we're talking about fear, we're talking about a topic that we all can relate to.
Yeah.
And fear can so easily creep in even when you're doing your most to try to walk in faith. And quite frankly, this year we've had our own personal bouts with it ourselves, both individually as well as in our marriage. And one of those specific examples is when we found out we were pregnant. And I know for you, Shantae, personally, that invoked some fears and some things that you had to filter and walk through personally.
Yeah, in the middle of us being really excited about the pregnancy, all those fearful and what if questions that I had in my first two pregnancies came to mind. And I finally resolved, you know what, this go round, I refuse to operate in fear. Yeah. There's no reason to. And the moment I made that resolve, I kid you not, that's when the virus came. Yeah. And we're pregnant turned into, we're pregnant.
What does this mean?
What does this look like? And so more fearful and what if questions comes to mind, and what will going to our doctor's appointments look like, or just what will having this baby in this season look like for us. Yeah.
And then what ifs turns to actual because we got sick. The whole house got sick.
Yeah.
I kind of kicked it off, and we didn't know, was it the flu? Was it COVID-19? And I know you kind of had to take on a lot more in the home because I was down, quarantine within the quarantine. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, I was busy trying to keep everyone separate, trying to keep everyone healthy in the middle of being very sick from the pregnancy, reaching levels of fatigue, and all of us get sick. And so in that moment of being concerned about our health, we realized our faith is being tested right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for me personally, I think I was strained from a fear perspective of trying to balance being informed with all the information that was coming in about this new pandemic and this new reality that was hitting everyone in our world, with that of like being overwhelmed. And I realized trying to balance those two extremes, the only way to really do that effectively was to filter it through truth.
Yep.
Otherwise, fear is going to come in, doubt's going to follow, and then ultimately you're left with just trying to process everything in your own logic, and that's always a dangerous precedent to try to filter and work through.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we love this story so much and why I think we personally connected with it this year is that when Jesus showed up in the midst of the disciples' circumstance, in the middle of that storm, the first thing he made it a point to talk about was not the storm itself, but their fear within it.
Yeah, because he could have told the storm to stop, but instead he chooses to tell the disciples, don't be afraid, I'm here. The storm is temporarily here, but I'm here. Yeah. And I know for us, for all of us, we're ready to get out of this situation. We want to return back to normal, but there's nothing like hearing Christ say in the middle of it all, don't be afraid, I'm here.
Yeah, and that's like so assuring, isn't it? I feel like whenever we've dealt with something, whether we're talking about this year or in the past, whenever we've been able to see Christ in it and know that he's here with us, it changes everything.
It changes everything.
And nothing changes, but everything changes. And we're able to walk through the circumstance with a lot more faith, a lot more confidence, and a lot more intentionality.
And we thank God for Peter's example to not fear, but to step out in faith. Rather than panicking in the boat, he wanted to be where Jesus was. If he was walking on the water, he wanted to walk on it with him.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is he took those steps in the middle of a storm, which is an untimely time. And I think that's what faith really requires. It requires us to take a step when it doesn't make sense. And personally, we've been challenged as a couple to approach our faith walk the same way. And a good example of that is the fact that we came into this year wanting to start a business, one that we've been working on for over a year and had been planning to launch right around the time that COVID hit. And as a result of that, just like everybody else, our plans were derailed. And we kind of had a choice to make. And this story was very helpful in us making that choice. We had the option to stay in the boat and kind of just ride it out and wait till things cleared up and made more sense. Or we can get out of the boat and take some steps and walk towards Jesus now, which we felt like he was calling us to do. And that's what we've been trying to do in faith. And what success has looked like is small steps towards Jesus. As far as we can tell, Peter didn't run across the water. He didn't leap across the water. He took a few small steps. And a few small steps in a storm on top of the water is just as incredible as leaps and bounds on land. So whether you're trying to start a business, or maybe you as a couple want to start spending some time together in the Word, or maybe just spend more family time together, if you see Jesus in it, get out the boat and take some steps towards him.
We give Peter a hard time because he took his eyes off Jesus and sunk. But quite frankly, we won't do this perfectly either. Yes, there are going to be days where we're thriving in boldness and stepping out on faith, but it is inevitable that there will be some days where Christ will have to insert his strength in our weakness. And that's okay. We do want these moments to be few, far in between, but please know if you sink, you will not be sunk, because Christ will be there to lift you up.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of walking in faith together, is that we get to help one another. And that's really the beauty of marriage. If one of us sinks, we can help the other one up and keep each other accountable. And the Bible even says two is better than one. If one falls down, the other can pick them up. And I know I've relied on that a lot of times in our circumstances that we've had to walk through, leaning on you heavily and vice versa. So that's the beauty of walking in faith together.
Know that this too will pass. All of our storms are temporary. It says that Peter and Jesus got into the boat, the storm stopped, and everyone burst out into worship. And that's just a great example of how your faith will bless others. They worship because of what they saw Christ do, but also what they saw Peter do with Christ's power.
Absolutely. And on top of that, if you walk in faith together in the middle, you get to the other side with more than you came in with. Everyone got to the shore and got to say they survived the storm, that they saw Jesus walk on water in the middle. But it was only Peter who got to say he participated in the miracle. So don't be a spectator. Let go of fear, step out of your boat, and walk in faith together.